Listen closely, not to me, to that faint tremor inside you, the one you've ignored for years, the one that only speaks when the world finally goes quiet. There is something you've wondered for a long time, quietly, secretly, in the hours when everyone else is asleep, in the spaces where laughter fades and the noise dissolves. The question that has followed you like a shadow: why do I feel more alive when I'm alone? You've tried to drown it in conversation. You've tried to bury it under relationships, responsibilities, and the expectations of others. But the question keeps returning like a slow echo you cannot outrun. Why? Why does solitude feel like home? While the world feels like a crowd you do not belong to, why does silence comfort you more than voices ever have? Why does distance feel safer than closeness? Why does the mind expand when the world falls away? You've never fully said it aloud, but you've always felt it. Something inside you lives in a different rhythm than most. Others fill their lives with constant motion, noise, chatter, plans, escape. They fear the spaces between things. They fear the quiet. They fear their own thoughts. But you've always sensed something in that quiet. A door, a mirror, a whisper. You didn't choose silence because you dislike people. You chose it because the world felt too sharp, too quick, too heavy. You chose it because your mind hears things others never notice. The shifts in tone, the smallest tremors of intention, the spaces between words where truth hides. You chose it because sensitivity is not weakness, it's awareness. And awareness has a price. Perhaps you've noticed it. How your thoughts stretch out like long shadows. How each emotion arrives layered, textured, complex. How every conversation leaves a residue you need time to process. How noise feels like an intruder. How crowds feel like storms. You've been called distant, reserved, cold, uninterested. But you know that isn't true. You feel deeply, too deeply, so deeply that the world overwhelms you if you're not careful. And so you step back, you retreat. You choose solitude not as an escape, but as a sanctuary. Still, there is that question. It lingers in the dim corners of your mind. Is something wrong with me for wanting to be alone? You've wondered if you're broken. You've wondered if you're hiding. You've wondered if solitude is a shield you built, or a truth you finally uncovered. No one taught you how to carry a mind that sees too much. No one prepared you for consciousness that sharpens with every passing year. No one explained that awareness isolates before it liberates. You grew up thinking everyone saw the world the same way you did, that everyone felt the weight of existence, that everyone sensed invisible currents beneath ordinary life. But as time passed, as conversations thinned, as relationships cracked under the weight of unspoken truths, you realized most people are not looking for truth. They're looking for distraction. Most are not afraid of being alone. They're afraid of meeting themselves. Most do not seek meaning. They seek comfort. Most do not want depth. They want certainty. And something in you shifted. A quiet knowing. A subtle fracture. You began to see how rare it is to feel the world from the inside out. To hear the pulse beneath the silence. To sense the complexity inside every soul you meet. You began to understand the quiet ache of intelligence, the loneliness that comes from seeing too far, the burden of thinking too deeply, the fatigue of pretending to be normal. And so, you withdrew into the one place that felt honest, yourself. Not out of bitterness, not out of fear, but out of recognition. You were not made to live on the surface of things. You were made to feel the depths. There is a kind of person who cannot breathe in shallow water. A kind of person who suffocates in noise. A kind of person whose soul grows restless when life becomes too simple. That person is you. And now, standing at the threshold of this story, you finally allow yourself to ask the question fully, without judgment, without shame, without apology. Why do intelligent people choose to be alone? Not just sometimes, not just occasionally, but instinctively, naturally. As if solitude is the only place where the mind finds its true shape. The answer is not simple. It is not comforting. It is not quick. but it is true. And as this journey begins, as the world grows softer, as the noise fades into the distance, you feel it, a quiet shift inside you. The beginning of recognition, the first breath of awakening, the slow unfolding of a truth your soul has always known. Welcome to the edge of the mirror, where solitude is not an escape, but a reflection, where silence is not emptiness, but clarity, where loneliness is not a curse, but a doorway, and where the question you fear is the same question that will free you. You wake each morning into a world that never stops moving. People rush. People talk. People fill every empty space with noise, as if silence were a threat, as if stillness might expose something they are not ready to face. You see it clearly now. You always have. The world fears quiet because quiet reveals truth, and truth is rarely convenient. You move through your days like a traveler passing through a crowded market. You see the colors, you hear the voices, you feel the movement around you, but you're not part of it. Not fully, not truly. There's a distance inside you, a soft, invisible layer of glass separating you from the noise. You observe life from the outside, as if watching a play from the shadows behind the stage curtains. This is the cycle, the endless pattern intelligent people live through. A pattern that begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, until one day you see it for what it really is. The more you understand, the more alone you become. Not because you reject the world, but because the world rejects depth. You notice things others overlook. You think thoughts others never consider. You feel emotions others cannot name. Your inner world grows larger than the outer world can hold. Observation. People cling to routines, habits, small talk, and surface-level stories. Realization. These things numb the existential ache. Observation. Most conversations avoid truth. Most interactions are masks. Most relationships are built on unspoken agreements to not look too deeply. Realization. Depth threatens the illusion of control. And you see through illusions like glass. This is why intelligent people retreat, not because they dislike humanity, but because shallow waters cannot hold an ocean. And your mind has always been an ocean. When you try to fit into the world of quick answers, simple narratives, and emotional shortcuts, you feel it. A tightening in the chest, a quiet suffocation. It's not that you're antisocial, it's that your soul refuses to shrink to fit inside someone else's expectations. So you step back, piece by piece, moment by moment, year by year, until solitude becomes your oxygen. And here, in the quiet, you see the cycle clearly. 1. Awareness opens your eyes. You see the patterns others are trapped in, the unconscious habits, the repeated mistakes, the illusions they chase, the distractions they cling to. 2. Understanding isolates you. The more you perceive, the fewer people you relate to. The more you reflect, the less noise you can tolerate. 3. Solitude becomes a refuge. You retreat not to escape life, but to finally see it. Depth replace distraction. You choose meaning over noise, truth over comfort, stillness over stimulation. 5. And then the cycle repeats. Awareness, isolation, solitude, depth, return, awareness again. It's a loop that never ends, unless you awaken through it. But you don't realize the cost until much later. Awareness sharpens you. Isolation hollows you. Solitude strengthens you. But depth divides you. Because the more deeply you see the world, the more painfully you understand people. You begin noticing hunger in their eyes, a thirst they cannot name, a storm they pretend is sunshine, a darkness they hide behind 1,000 smiles. You feel their fears, their unresolved memories, their unspoken insecurities, their silent longing for validation. You feel everything, and that is its own burden. Most do not want to be seen so clearly. They prefer the soft blur of ignorance. They prefer the distance of superficiality. They prefer the safety of small truths. But you carry a mirror wherever you go. Not because you choose to, Because awareness leaves you no choice. And people fear mirrors. They fear the reflections they've spent a lifetime avoiding. So relationships strain, friendships fracture, connections dissolve, not dramatically, quietly. Like sand slipping through fingers. You look around and wonder why everyone seems so far away. But the truth is simple. You outgrew the places where your soul could no longer breathe. That is the silent price intelligent and conscious people pay. Awareness costs belonging. Depth costs comfort. Clarity costs company. You thought you wanted freedom. What you wanted was truth. You thought you were living. You were only running. You thought you craved connection. But you craved understanding. You thought solitude was loneliness. But solitude became home. This is the cycle, the quiet storm that reshapes a mind like yours. The more you awaken, the more the world drifts into distance. Not because you disappear from it, but because you begin seeing through it. People chase distraction. You chase meaning. People fear silence. You hear truth within it. People cling to the world. You stand at its edge, watching waves crash against the shore of your awareness. And yet, even with all this understanding, a quiet question stirs inside you. If solitude is my nature, then why does it still ache? Because intelligence does not remove longing. Awareness does not erase the human need to belong. Depth does not eliminate the desire to be understood. You are not immune to loneliness. You are simply unwilling to trade truth for company. And so the cycle continues. Awareness pulls you inward. Loneliness pulls you outward. You stand between two worlds. The world of surface existence and the world of inner truth. Most never leave the first. Few ever enter the second. But you live in both. Floating between, belonging to neither. This is the quiet ache, the existential tension, the spiritual friction of high consciousness. You feel it. You've always felt it. And now the mirror begins to turn inward, not toward the world, toward you. In the next descent, we go deeper, past thought, past analysis, past identity, into stillness, into the place where solitude stops being a condition and becomes an awakening. Lower your voice inside yourself now. Let everything soften. Let the edges blur. This is not about thinking anymore. You've done enough thinking for a lifetime. This is about listening, not to the world, not to me, to something older, deeper, quieter. The part of you that has been whispering beneath every moment of solitude. The descent begins not with understanding, but with surrender. You sit inside your own mind, as if lowering yourself into a still, dark lake. The surface ripples at first, with memories, judgments, questions, noise. But slowly, it becomes calm. You realize something here, something that cannot be spoken, only felt. You were never alone. You were only surrounded by noise, surrounded by expectation, surrounded by masks, surrounded by the weight of being who the world needed you to be. And solitude stripped all of that away, leaving you naked with yourself. That is why it felt frightening at first, why the silence stung, why the stillness felt too large to hold. Aloneness is not the absence of people, it is the absence of distraction. And when distraction disappears, the truth begins to appear. You feel it now. The quiet pulse beneath everything, like a soft drumbeat, like a distant echo, like something ancient wrapped inside your ribs. You sit with it. You breathe with it. You let it guide you deeper. Thought slow. Vision narrows. Time loosens its grip. And in the dim glow of your awareness, you encounter the thing most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Yourself. Not the self you show in conversation. Not the self you perform for acceptance. Not the self you craft to survive. But the raw, unfiltered self that only appears in silence. At first, it feels like falling, like losing balance, like stepping off a cliff into darkness. But it is not a fall. It is a return to the quiet space beneath the chaos. A return to the home hidden inside your own awareness. a return to the truth you buried beneath years of noise. You begin to feel something shift, a gentle uncoiling, a loosening of the tight places inside you. The descent continues. Your mind becomes a hallway, long, dim, silent. Each door you pass is a moment from your life, a memory, a wound, a joy, a fear. Some doors whisper, some stay quiet, some vibrate with things you have not yet faced. But you keep walking, not to analyze, not to judge, simply to witness, because awareness is not a weapon, it is a light. And the deeper you go, the softer that light becomes. You start to notice something strange, something almost paradoxical. The closer you come to yourself, the less you feel alone, as if solitude were not emptiness, but fullness. As if being alone were not isolation, but intimacy. As if the silence you once feared was never silence at all, but presence. Your presence. You breathe in, the air feels heavier now, warmer, as if the body itself is remembering something forgotten. You breathe out, the tension slips away like sand through an open hand. There is no narrative here, no lesson, no rule, only sensation, only awareness, only the soft hum of existence felt from the inside. And in this stillness, a realization emerges, slowly, quietly, like dawn rising behind mountains. The mind seeks companionship. The soul seeks space. Intelligence craves understanding, conversation, connection. But consciousness craves nothing. It only observes. It only witnesses. It only flows. This is why intelligent people choose solitude. Not to think more, but to think less. Not to analyze the world, but to dissolve into themselves. Not to escape reality, but to touch the part of reality untouched by illusion. The descent deepens. You feel a soft vibration in your chest, like a thread being pulled gently. You follow it inward. The world fades. Thought fades. Identity loosens. And there is only awareness now, pure, unmeasured, untethered. You realize, for the first time perhaps, that all your life you have been looking outward for the thing that was always inward. Belonging, peace, meaning, connection, quiet. They were never behind doors, never inside people, never waiting in external places. They were waiting here, in the depth of your own presence. This is what awareness does. It peels back the layers. It reveals the stillness beneath the storm. It shows you that solitude is not a punishment, but a path carved for those who can hear their own soul beneath the world's noise. And then you reach the final room, the heart of the inner mirror. You step inside and it is empty, but not hollow, not cold. Empty like the sky, empty like the ocean, empty like possibility. The kind of emptiness that is full. You stand in the center of it, breathing, listening, being. You expected answers, words, revelations. But awareness does not speak in language. It speaks in clarity, and clarity whispers only this: you are not alone when you are with yourself. The descent ends here, not because you've reached the bottom, but because the bottom is not a place. It is a state, a soft awakening in the dark, a returning to the beginning, a remembering of what you always were beneath the noise. Breathe. Not the shallow breath of survival, the deeper one, the breath that rises from a place nothing has ever touched. Let it move through you. Let it spread. Let it soften everything it reaches. Because now you stand on the threshold of something you have been moving toward your entire life. Even when you didn't know the path was leading here, awareness brought you inward. Solitude held you still. Silence opened the door. And here, in this final space, something inside begins to loosen its grip. A truth you've carried for years, maybe decades, begins to unravel. You always believed that solitude was a condition, a circumstance, a consequence of being different, a side effect of intelligence, a symptom of sensitivity. But it wasn't. It was preparation, a slow, patient clearing of the inner ground. So something finer, something quieter, something truer could finally emerge. You feel it now, like a faint warmth under layers of long winter, like the first hint of dawn after a night that felt endless. The liberation does not arrive with thunder. It arrives with stillness, a stillness that feels like recognition. You look inward and see that solitude was never an exile. It was a calling, a summons back to yourself. The world teaches you to seek outward, to chase connection, to chase validation, to chase purpose, to chase peace. But solitude teaches you the opposite. It shows you that connection begins inside. That validation is unnecessary. That purpose is discovered, not given. That peace is what remains when the noise dissolves. You spent years believing you were escaping the world, but now you understand. You were returning to yourself. And from that return, something profound becomes clear. The price of high consciousness is solitude, but the reward is freedom. Not the freedom of doing whatever you want. Not the freedom of escaping responsibility. Not the freedom of detaching from humanity. A different freedom. A greater one. The freedom of no longer being ruled by noise. The freedom of not needing constant validation. The freedom of seeing through illusion. The freedom of feeling without being overwhelmed. The freedom of thinking without being trapped. The freedom of existing without performing. You realize now that intelligent people choose to be alone, not because they are broken, not because they are arrogant, not because they are cold, but because solitude is the only place their soul can breathe. The world moves too quickly for a mind like yours, too loudly, too carelessly. Solitude slows everything down until life becomes something you can finally feel again. And here, in this slow unfolding, something unexpected happens. Compassion, not the kind you force, the kind that rises naturally when the mind becomes still. You begin to see others not as threats to your peace, but as wanderers searching for the same stillness you found by accident, by necessity, by truth. You stop resenting the world for misunderstanding you. You stop longing for people to meet you at your depth. You stop expecting others to see what you see. You simply let them be. And that is liberation. When you no longer need agreement to feel grounded, when you no longer require company to feel whole, when you no longer chase belonging because you finally belong to yourself, and slowly, gently, subtly, life begins to feel different. Conversations no longer drain you. Crowds no longer suffocate you. Silence no longer frightens you. Loneliness no longer wounds you, because now you see something paradoxical. You can be alone without feeling lonely. And you can be surrounded without losing yourself. This is the shift, the quiet revolution inside. Solitude becomes a choice, not a prison. Connection becomes a gift, not a demand. Stillness becomes a companion, not a threat. You begin to walk differently in the world, slowly, calmly, lightly, as if carrying a secret the world has forgotten. And perhaps you are. Perhaps the secret of consciousness was never about knowledge. Never about insight, never about seeing deeper than others. Perhaps the secret was this. When you stop running from silence, silence becomes peace. When you stop fighting solitude, solitude becomes strength. When you stop resisting your nature becomes liberation. You feel it now, a softness spreading through your awareness, like a quiet glow behind your ribs, like a candle lit in a room you thought was empty. You have come home, not to a place, not to a person, to a presence, your presence. The presence that remains. When noise fades, when masks dissolve, when the world falls away, the presence that has always waited for you in the quiet. You stand with it now, breathing the same breath, sharing the same space. And in that stillness, something finally settles. You were never meant to fit into the world. You were meant to see it, and through seeing it, you were meant to transcend it, not by leaving it behind, but by no longer being trapped within it. This is the quiet liberation. Soft, patient, absolute, and then the final truth arrives. Simple, unassuming, yet carrying the weight of everything you've lived. When you stop seeking peace, it finds you. Let it find you now. Let it fill you. Let it settle into the deepest parts of your being. You are here. You are present. You are whole. The noise cannot touch you. The world cannot drown you. The past cannot hold you. Nothing can take this stillness from you, because it was never given to you. It was uncovered. It was revealed. It was remembered. And now, at last, it is yours.